Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Comic Anthologist. And if you're tuning in for the first time, please hit the subscribe button to show your support. And also hit that bell to show us your support as well, to let us know if you liked it or not. And definitely, if you want to send any of your comments, you could hit us up at thecomicanthologist@gmail.com. Today we're going to talk about one of our favorite Spider-Man stories, and we already know, we can go ahead and go into it briefly. Spider-Man has been around since 1963, and he made his first appearance in Amazing Fantasy number 15.
Right.
But in any case, getting to the more so of the present, we're talking about the storyline called Back in Black.
And this is when a time when Spider-Man basically he puts on his black suit, because he originally wore the black suit. It was the alien symbiote costume, which eventually became Venom.
Eventually, and we talked about that before.
But in this case, it was just a regular costume, but he put it somewhere to keep it away from Mary Jane, because he did that out of respect for his wife at the time when they were still married.
Of course, this is before they did that one more day madness. Yeah, I don't want to even talk about that.
But see, in this case, Back in Black takes place literally right at the conclusion, or right around the conclusion of the Civil War.
And this is one of those things, if anybody has read Civil War, this is one of those things that Spider-Man had revealed his secret identity to the general public. He went in terms of a media broadcast that Stark had basically set up for him during the Civil War story.
Basically to keep to have transparency with superheroes and everything when
they have the
superhero registration act.
Exactly.
So
when that took place, that made him and his family a target, and of course, none other than his main nemesis,
one of his main
nemesis was the Kingpin. And once he learned his secret identity, that's when all hell broke loose for the Parker family, because that was one of those times where the Kingpin hired an assassin to take out Mary Jane, Peter Parker, and his Aunt May. But since Peter Parker had his spider sense or whatnot to warn him of anything that was about to happen, he got Mary Jane out of the way, but the bullet found and struck Aunt May during the time of the Civil War.
Yeah, this is at the conclusion of
the Civil War. And when this took place, he realized that his whole family was in danger, and Aunt May had to be taken to the hospital because she was in critical. She was basically on a critical list, and she may not was going to make it or whatnot.
Now, one thing I like about this, I don't mean to cut you off.
No. Yeah, go for it. Because
one of the things I liked about this story, even though Spider-Man is a lighthearted character and he likes to joke and put out quips or whatever whenever he's fighting bad guys.
Yeah.
In this case, this is the darkest, as far as I'm concerned, in my experience from reading the book. This was the time when he was at his darkest. He basically was considering and contemplating killing the Kingpin.
Not only that, he took a bunch of the villains that, I rather wouldn't say villains, but the henchmen that the Kingpin had hired.
And one by one,
he was taking them out, but he wasn't killing them.
But he broke some limbs. I mean, he threatened them within an inch of their life, and some of them he beat within an inch of their lives.
Well, because there was one particular assassin I remember in the first iteration, the first assassin, that did pull the trigger, because he had went around and started accosting certain criminals or whatnot, finding out information as to who pulled the trigger, and then finally came across the assassin that did it. When he finally came across him,
then another assassin turned around and killed that assassin
to keep him quiet, so that way it wouldn't lead back to the Kingpin. But the Kingpin, being 2 steps, sometimes 10 steps ahead of Spider-Man, and he was in prison too, was trying to stay ahead of him, so that way he made sure he made Peter Parker's life a living hell.
Right. But one thing I liked about that was that even though the Kingpin tried to basically have all those steps ahead of Peter Parker, Peter Parker was catching up, and plus he had his identity was already outed, so he was fighting bad guys just in his regular civilian identity.
Oh yeah, he didn't care anymore because his aunt May was on the line. I mean, her life was on the line, and Mary Jane was concerned for him, but he just went into rage mode. And this is a side of Peter Parker I had not seen in a long time. The last time I had seen anything like that, but it was just a brief iteration of it, was in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 20,
Right.
when he came across
Iron Man 2020.
exactly Andros Stark, who basically had went back in time. That will be another story we will touch upon later. Who that version of was Andros Stark or Arnold Stark?
No, Andros Stark.
It was Andros Stark who went back in time to try to try to get a retina scan of a child who was an adult in his timeline, and basically stop a citywide, almost like a planet buster bomb, from not only wiping out his family, but wiping out the whole entire city itself,
Right.
and all the outer lying regions of that era.
You know what was funny too? Spider-Man was wearing the black costume at that time.
Yes, he was.
But it
And
wasn't the Venom symbiote, but it was regular black costume because
that he wore in Back in Black.
Yeah.
So that was another story of Back in Black, but that's the last time I had seen Peter Parker like literally just lose it.
Right.
And beat the stew out of Andros Stark.
And he cracked that armor really bad.
Yep, and because he basically had injured that child getting that retina scan, and he just lost it. And this is one of those iterations where Back in Black, you see him go back to that dark era,
Right.
and he just literally just lost it and just cracked, broke arms. I mean, injured the stew out of criminals until he finally was able to get
Oh,
to the
might I
Kingpin.
interject with at the conclusion of that storyline with Spider-Man beating down the Iron Man of 2020? The twist of that story was, even though he got the retina scan and that kid was injured or whatnot, he went back. By the time that Iron Man went back, the city was completely like a big crater. He got back home into the middle of a big crater.
And his family, and that version of Iron Man, Andros Stark, he was not a hero. He was basically a glory hound. But we're going to get back to Peter Parker. But just to make a long story short, for any of you that want to see or read that particular story, that version of Iron Man got back to, or rather, he got pulled back to his timeline,
Right.
because the time machine was destroyed. So therefore, it yanked him back. But by the time he got back, he was at ground zero. His family was at ground zero, and everything was atomized in a 30 to 50 mile radius. No, 100-mile radius, because it was that powerful of a bomb. And he just sat there sobbing because he lost his family, and that version of Spider-Man thwarted him because he was being a villain, essentially, because he was just like, wait a minute, you're not Tony Stark. And the armor that he wore was more,
Right.
how shall I say, a horrified version of the Tony Stark armor. But getting back to Back in Black, what did you think so much so about the Kingpin, and how he basically just controlled all the things that he was controlling on the inside of prison? What do you think of that in terms of being the way he was in that towards Peter Parker?
What I liked about that was that the Kingpin had pushed Peter Parker that he very rarely goes to, and then when he got him into that point, then it's like basically pushing like a wild animal back into a corner. It's going to turn around and fight, and it's going to fight viciously, and that's what Peter Parker was doing. Parker was doing. And in doing so, I was shocked when I read it. It took me aback, like, whoa, he's like breaking limbs and just like, man. But at the same time, he was threatening to kill the Kingpin until he finally caught up to the Kingpin with all the machinations
Yes,
of
he
the
did.
Kingpin of trying to keep Parker or trying not to keep him finding out what the truth was. When he found out who it was, to me, the best part of the story was when he caught up to the Kingpin at the prison. And then when they got to fighting in the prison, man, it was just like, it was no holds
No
barred.
holds barred. That's what it was. It was just straight knuckle up, and just they handled it. But it was one of those things that Parker literally beat the Kingpin within an inch of his life.
And one thing Peter did was, because we keep mentioning Peter Parker as opposed to Spider-Man, because when he caught up to the Kingpin, he was still dressed in his full Spider-Man outfit. But he took off his mask and took off the top of it, and it was the Kingpin going face to face with and going toe to toe with Peter Parker. And again, he beat him within an inch of his life, picked him up by his skin, just picked him up like, you threaten my family again. He said, if my Aunt May dies, then I'm coming back to kill you. And I was just like,
It was deep. That was one of those deep stories because you see the depths of what will a man do to protect his family, and that's what Parker was doing, was trying
or to get revenge for his family.
Well, yeah, because that was when Aunt May was at death's door, which, like I said, that's set up for another storyline, but we won't discuss that until much, much later.
Yeah, because it led into this. It led directly into the storyline One More Day, which is the controversial storyline that was written.
It's still controversial to this
very
day.
Exactly.
And I don't like it very much because they basically erased Parker being married to Mary Jane, set up the new status quo, and then that's when they did the storyline after One More Day, because Mephisto basically took
Mephisto being
the Marvel version of the devil,
right.
and Mephisto made the deal to heal Aunt May, but in order to do so, take away their marriage and make it so that they never even met or never even got married in the first place.
Well, I wouldn't even say never even met, but never even married because of them.
They wiped out. It just basically retconned all that history because that was Marvel's way of saying, well, we got to take him back to the status quo and make it so that Parker is
Still
just
single.
basically still single, doing his thing and having the same old Parker luck. But after a while, you want to see the evolution of a character.
Right.
You don't want to keep seeing the same thing over and over. That's what makes Spider-Man so satisfying, is that he evolves, but he still has that same Parker luck, which we all know that's not necessarily a good thing.
Right, exactly. So,
Any case, we just wanted to hit that story up to you. So if you get a chance to ever read it, it's called, and it's a trade paperback called Spider-Man Back in Black. It takes place after the events of the Civil War that took place back in the day in 2007. So this is the Comic Anthologist. And if you have any other questions, you can hit us up at thecomicanthologist@gmail.com. Until then, and also hit that bell to show us your support, and please hit the subscribe button to show us your support as well. In any case, take it easy, and we'll get back to you soon.
thanks for watching.
Peace.